Okay, so how do we get a top grade in the AQA reading paper? Well, in this video we're going to be having a look at questions 1 to 3 in the January 2011 higher paper. And you can tell from the pictures, can't you? The first article is about a whitewater rafting expedition on the Grand Canyon. The second is about a T-Rex. And the third is to do with Mount Everest. So let's get started. Question 1. Now you will know that question 1 has got several things that you must pay attention to. It's pretty easy, but just make sure you do. First of all, make sure that your answer refers to all of the text, because the examiner wants to know that you can read all of it and not just talk about a bit of it. So make sure that you refer to all of it at some point in your answer. You must write a lot, and that means fill the space that they give you. So if they give you 2 pages, why don't you try and fill 2 pages, or at least 1.5? If you only fill half a page, you've not written enough. No matter how tiny your handwriting, it doesn't fool anybody. Okay, so write as much as you think you can. Next, you must show them that you can relate to the text, but you don't want to be copying out loads of long quotes. Just short little one-word quotations or little phrases, only small ones, embedded in your normal sentence construction is what they're looking for. And this is a tricky one, but it's really not that difficult once you get your head around it. You've got to show them that you understand what's behind the text, a little bit of perception. Comment on subtleties or odd things that might occur to you as you read the text. We'll talk more about that later. And finally, try to write like a book. A lot of students are scared to sound posh, if you like, to use words that they wouldn't, or phrases they wouldn't normally use. You must do that. You want to show them your skill, show them your vocabulary. So be brave. It doesn't matter. Try to write like a book. Try to write engaging sentences with words that you might not always use. Okay, so what is question 1? Well, question 1 asks you to read it, so that's the first thing. There's a big clue there. Read it, make sure you do, give yourself time to read it. And the question is, and you usually get this kind of question for question 1, what do you learn from Elizabeth Hyde's article about where she'd been and what she'd been doing? There's 8 marks there, and really they want to know, can you read and understand what you're reading? So let's get started. Okay, so let's get started. So we've read the article, we've got the idea about what it's about, okay, and what we want to do is highlight, really, I think, in our initial sort of read through, some of the things that are to do with what she was doing, touch on what she was feeling as well, but let's go for the easy stuff to start with. So we can see that she was on a trip with her husband and her 3 teenage children. Got that, yeah. It was in the early July. Cool. And they were going down a 13-day trip, 225 miles, down the Colorado River through the Grand Canyon. Okay, that's pretty obvious, isn't it? That's fantastic. We can also see that there were 22 of them. Well, a bit later on she does refer to 2 dozen people, but okay, we've got the rough idea about how many people there were. All right, and we can see that they were going down with masses of gear and loads of river guides, all scurrying about. So this is all information about what she's doing, and she describes it as being our world for the next 2 weeks. Yeah, those are all to do with what she was doing. I think that's pretty relevant, isn't it? Pretty good. All right, let's have a look a bit lower down. We're in a mixed group, yeah, with a big age range. You can't be shy on a Grand Canyon river trip. That could imply that she is quite shy, maybe, I don't know, possibly. And what she goes on to say is that when you're on the water for, oh, there we are, on the water for 5 to 8 hours every day. But when you're off the water, she goes on to say that you're eating, sleeping and bathing together. That implies, doesn't it, that you've got to kind of hide your shyness a little bit if you're on one of these trips, because you have to sort of do everything together, as it were. So that's quite interesting. There are 5 rafts, that might be of interest, with 4 to 6 passengers in each one. and she said that the gear was the tightest packing system she'd ever seen. So she was obviously pretty impressed with the way that they packed the raft. And the passengers, well, they perched on the side tubes, and she describes them as prime seats, meaning fantastic seats, with great views. There we are. So we're getting a feel really for what she's feeling about it so far. She's pretty impressed with the organisation of it, I think. And there is a sense of shyness that she's going to have to overcome, and also a sense of how long the trip will be. It's quite grueling, I think, quite a difficult trip for her to do. 5 to 8 hours a day on the water. Pretty tough journey. Okay. Alright, now let's see what else she goes on to tell us. Well, she seems that she's pretty excited by the whole thing. And it seems that she's really making the most of the journey. She's straining her neck, gazing up at the steep walls closing in on her. So she's making some effort to sort of take it all in and enjoy it. She gives us a clue as well about the effect that the actual rapids have on her, as she uses a little simile here. She says it's a Disneyland-like experience. And she describes how you're plunging down. It's a white-knuckle roller coaster that has people screaming with the thrill. So she clearly finds the whole thing very thrilling, which is fantastic. She then goes on to tell us how she was the only one who fell in. The only one who violated the rules during the trip was me. So there's a sense of embarrassment there, I think, don't you? She was okay, she was fine, but she was scared. She was exhilarated more than she'd ever been. But I think as well as that, she was a little bit embarrassed. Now, it doesn't say that, but I think that's a clue really, isn't it, as to how she was feeling. And towards the end, at the very end of it, they get out of the boats and they finish, all their clothes and their hair had loads and loads of river silt in, but nobody, including her, cared. She didn't care. She wanted a shower. She was feeling like she needed to get washed. But look what the trip left her with, a desire to run away. Run away from what? It doesn't say. And become a river guide. Wow, that really did have quite an impact on her, didn't it? So let's return to the question now we've read the article and hopefully done some annotations on it. What do we learn from Elizabeth Hyde's article about where she had been and what she had been doing? Now, look, it's really quite easy to get some marks on this question because all you got to do is say what she'd been doing. Well, it's obvious, isn't it, that she was on a 13-day, 225-mile trip in boats going down the Colorado River through the Grand Canyon with her family, her husband and 3 teenage kids and 20-odd other people. Yeah, that will get you marks because it proves that you can read it and it proves that you can understand what it was you were reading. Now, that's okay if you want to get a lower grade, but if you want to get into the higher bands, you have to kind of read between the lines a little bit. So we've already established the basic facts. We get all of this. We understand that, okay? And we understand as well that they're in a mixed group with lots of different people, and that she does describe that you're on the water for a long time. When you're off the water, you're eating, sleeping and bathing together. Now, what does that mean? Why would you say that? Well, she's talking about how you can't be shy when you go on one of these trips. We're not saying that she is shy. We don't know if she is or not. But she's acknowledged that you have to put your shyness to one side because you're going to be eating and sleeping and bathing together with all of these strangers. Yeah? Now that's insight into the text. That's reading between the lines and getting to the heart of what she's saying. All right? Now we can also see her excitement at the whole journey when she's in the final paragraph on this slide talks about it's the tightest packing system I've ever seen. So she's really impressed with the way that they packed the boat and got it ready. And the passengers are perched on the side tubes, and she describes where they're sitting as prime seats with great views. So clearly it doesn't say I was impressed with the way they packed the boat, but she was. And I think it was great that we sat on the edge of the, but it's, she's describing it, and you're having to read between the lines to get into her mind to find out what she's thinking. And further down, rocks everywhere. She's describing, isn't she, flying down the river. So you can get this incredible sense of engagement and excitement that she's saying. And at the end of that paragraph, I kept straining my neck, gazing up at the walls closing in on us. She's really making an effort to sort of put you there, and you can describe it. So she's straining her neck. You can see her really trying to get a view of everything so she can soak it all up. The next bit, where she talks about the white knuckle roller coaster ride, is using a metaphor. Yeah, she's using Disneyland roller coaster as a metaphor for her experience. But it does, doesn't it, show you the experience and the excitement that she's transferring to you. The next to last paragraph as well gives us another chance to get some higher marks. This is where she falls into the water and she says, the only one who violated them during the trip was me. It's almost like, why me? Why did I have to be the only one that fell in? So what do you sense she might be feeling there? Well, she's scared and exhilarated. She tells us that. Yeah, that would get you the C when she fell in, the C grade. How do you get the higher marks? If you can pick up on the fact that she was clearly embarrassed by that, the fact that she was the one that fell in. Do you see? And the last paragraph gives us a hint as well about the amazing effect it had on her this trip. I welcomed the chance for a shower. Yep, that's pretty obvious. She was dirty from going down the river. Loads of silt in her clothes and her hair. And that will get you the lower grade mark. But how would you get into the higher? Well, look at the last bit. The trip left me with a desire to run away and become a river guide. Well, that's crazy, isn't it? That she wants to immediately drop everything, her family, her job. She's on holiday, but she wants to stay there and become a river guide because it's so exciting and so much fun. Now, folks, those extra bits, the bits that are beyond the obvious, are the ones that you need to latch onto. It's not difficult, but you need to just latch onto it, be brave, talk like a book, and just add those in and you'll get the higher marks. And before we put question 1 to bed for a moment, let's just have a look at my annotations. So this was about 5 minutes reading the article and making notes as I went through it to kind of highlight the things that I thought were relevant. So you can see I've numbered them really quickly so I can see whereabouts, or I've drawn arrows or lines, but I know what I'm talking about here. I think I can probably convert that into a reasonable response after just a little bit of annotation. So pause the video if you like, have a read of my notes, and you'll see how what I've just been talking about came from these notes, the ones I used when I first read the article. Okay, we'll move on to question 2 in a minute. Okay, so question 2. Okay, we've got another article to read, source 2. And this one is going to be looking at presentation techniques. And you've probably done quite a bit of thinking about this already, and quite a bit of practice. But let's have a look at this one. And let's just remember a few key pointers for question 2. Again, it's 8 marks, but let's have a look. Just like question 1, if they give you 2 pages to fill the space. All right, not with great big writing, doesn't fool anybody, but fill the space if you can. If you only write a couple of paragraphs, you ain't going to pick up the marks. You just can't. All right, so write a lot, fill the space, and you'll be okie dokie. Now again, as with the first one, embedded, short, one word or little phrase quotations help hugely. If you can drop those in, you will certainly impress the examiner. Also, be brave, all right? Comment on the technical features, of course. Yeah, you need to talk about the presentation techniques that have been used, but as well as that, talk about the things that might just occur to you. It doesn't matter if they sound silly. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't, because you might hit on something that not many other candidates who are sitting the exam hit and land on. And if you're wrong, it doesn't matter, does it? Who cares? All right? Just have a go and be brave. And most of all, like with the other one, please write like a book. Okay? Use your vocabulary. Use connectors. You know, try to impress the examiner with your ability to play with the language as well. Okay? All right, let's have a look. Now, here was question 2. You've got to read the article called Fearsome Tyrannosaurus Rex Sue May Have Died of a Sore Throat. And the question is, and they always ask one very much like this one, explain how the headline, the subheadline and the picture are effective and how they link with the text. Okay, really important that we get our heads around that one. So let's have a quick look at the text. Let's have a look at the article. Here it is. So the headline, fearsome Tyrannosaurus rex Sue may have died of a sore throat. So let's have a think about how would we begin to get our heads around something in there. What's interesting about that? Well, yeah, we all know what a T-Rex is like. Yeah, we all understand that. It's the most famous of all the dinosaurs. Even a 2-year-old knows what a T-Rex looks like. And it's fearsome. We've all seen Jurassic Park where it eats the man on the toilet. Yeah, we all know that T-Rex was incredibly fearsome and deadly predator. Yeah, probably the most dangerous predator, deadly animal ever to walk the earth. But let's look at what they've put here. Fearsome, yeah, that catches your eye. Tyrannosaurus rex, yeah, that's fantastic. Let's go. And what's it called? Sue. Doesn't quite fit, does it? A T-Rex called Sue? That's a bit weird. Why on earth? Oh, well, it must be irony. It's a comic name, isn't it? It's a kind of a silly name. I mean, Sue, is it just me? I don't know. I associate it with fluffy kittens and bunny rabbits, not T-Rexes. Yeah, so it's a kind of catching your eye, a bit of a joke, and it's irony. Okay, a bit strange. It's to make you want to read a bit more. Very, very odd. Okay, and then may have died of a sore throat. What, a T-Rex died of a sore throat? You must be kidding. Died of having its head ripped off by a, I don't know, velociraptor, I suppose, but a sore throat. Again, it catches your eye because that's so silly. It's incredible. A T-Rex dying of a sore throat? Well, that's crazy. And so the oddness of it, the fascination that it might throw at you, and the fact that it's quite funny makes you want to read more, makes you want to engage with it still further. Okay, and that's what it's done. And it works. Let's have a look at the subheading while we're at it. A parasite that infects pigeons made it increasingly difficult for the T-Rex to swallow and led to starvation, a new study suggests. But again, that tells us a bit more about the article, but it's still a bit weird. What, a parasite that infects pigeons? What's that got to do with a T-Rex? That's kind of weird. A pigeon and T-Rex? Well, I know that birds are supposed to have come from dinosaurs, but really? A little parasite killing a massive creature like that? Well, I know what it makes me want to do. It makes me want to read some more. And how can a sore throat make a great big creature like that starve? Well, I do want to read some more, and I want to look at the picture, which is what we're going to do right now. Okay, so let's look at the picture. Well, we're going to see if it can link to the headline. So, fearsome Tyrannosaurus rex. Yep, I have to admit that picture of the T-Rex looks pretty fearsome. It's a huge skeleton. It's clearly enormous, yeah? And later on in the text we find out that that's the case because it, quote, stretches 13 meters from nose to tail and weighs 7 tons. It tells us that in the text. So the picture kind of backs that up. But it's fearsome. And you know it's fearsome because look at those teeth. Huge, great thing. Massive teeth. Really, really fearsome and oh, scary, scary, scary. So the picture is large compared to the article. It's quite prominent. It's in a prominent position on the page. And the T-Rex, although not looking directly at you and me, is looking as if it's about to have some breakfast with those rather tiny people standing just to the right of it. Now, what's interesting there, I think, is that they've deliberately, I think, placed people into the picture to give you a sense of scale, so that you understand just how huge this creature was and how awesome it was. And it's got a huge head, massive head, which is kind of ironic, I suppose, when you consider the article is about it having a sore throat. All right, that's quite interesting. But it is facing towards us, as it will. It's not looking at us, but it's pointing its body towards us, which again kind of makes it jump out of the picture towards you. So that's quite a striking image. Okay, now let's have a look at the text, because the text links to the picture and the headline. Yeah, we've already determined that they've said in the headline that it's fearsome, and we can see that that does link to it. it talks about some activities that the creature displays that are pretty fearsome. So let's just highlight a couple of those, shall we? So it's talking about how it lived a fearsome life. So it's survived violent skirmishes, so it's obviously been fighting. It's got hideous injuries, yeah, 3 broken ribs, torn tendons, and a damaged shoulder. They can tell that from the injuries that the body has got. We can also, it's reinforced how big the creature is, 13 meters from nose to tail. Okay. Now, it says that it died of a sore throat. And really the question, I suppose, is how? How on earth could a great creature like that die of a sore throat? Well, it goes on to explain that there are similarities with a disease that affects modern birds. And they can see that in the skeletons of both those creatures. And that as the infection spread, the dinosaur would find it increasingly difficult to swallow and would die. Yeah? So clearly the text is reflected in the size of the picture and in the ferocity of the creature and in the lifestyle that it led. Mortal combat, you expect that these creatures would fight to the death, but no, it was caused by an infection that you can get today in pigeons. All right, so the key to question 2 is, of course, to pick out the fact that this is in bold and it's a large, striking headline, and that the subheading goes on to tell us more information, and both of those make us want to lead into the article. And the picture also reinforces the message in the headline that this is about a T-Rex, that it's a really fearsome creature and it's vicious and nasty, and then the article confirms that, but then tells us the information that the article is really about, that it was a very tiny little parasite that caused it to die. All right, there we go. That's what we need to do for that one. Now, have a look before I finish at my annotations. By all means, pause the video and have a look at what I did in about 5 minutes after I'd read the article. And I think there again I got pretty much the main points that I wanted to talk about, and those are the ones that I've just been discussing with you now. All right, give me a minute and we'll have a look at question 3, shall we? Okay, question 3. Now then, this is source 3, the different one that we need to look at. Again, hopefully you've been practiced at it. So let's have a look at this this question 3, source 3 in a moment, but let's just dip into a few little handy hints. Now, they're not dissimilar, folks, to the previous ones. Again, write a lot. Fill that space. If they give you 2 pages, fill them up, okay? You write 2 sentences, ain't gonna do that well. So do your best, write as much as you can. And by all means, in this question, embed appropriate quotations. Don't quote the whole paragraphs, but they're going to be looking for some pretty meaty kind of quotes, if you can, where you can lift them out to prove your point, or to give evidence, if you will, or to explain what you're trying to say. But be brave. You get the marks for perception, for perceptive comments. Don't just look for the obvious things that the source tells you. Try to get into the mind of the person writing it. What are they really saying? What's behind the text? Those are the ones that will separate you from all the other grade C students and will lift you into those higher grade boundaries. All right, so be brave. You've got nothing to lose. No one's going to care. It doesn't matter. Go for it. Write like a book. Okay, you will impress the examiner. I promise you. You will impress the examiner if you use complex sentences, if you use a variety of connectives, if you use words that you wouldn't normally throw into everyday conversation. Write like a book. Okay, now this article is from a short article about a mountaineer, and it's about coming down from Everest and how this guy called Pete Boardman almost lost his life. And it's a superb read. But in the article here, there's one section of it, and the question is this: explain which parts of Pete Boardman's story of the return to Camp 6 you find tense and exciting. So this is a gift of a question if you get one like this, really, because it's about you, isn't it? What do you think the writer has done to make it sound feel tense and exciting. So looking for tension and excitement as we go through. Okay? All right. Okay, let's have a look at that in just one moment. All right, so how does the author build up tension and excitement when we read this? All right, let's see what he's up to. Well, the first thing is that the title itself of the article, I think, hints at a sense of irony. Look, climbing Everest is pretty hard anyway, wouldn't you agree? I think climbing Mount Everest is probably incredibly difficult, however you do it. But he's saying that they climbed it the hard way, all right? As if there's an easy way to do it. So there's a sense of irony there, but that sort of sets the tone for what's to come. Now, the situation is that him and his climbing companion, the Sherpa, have climbed to the top of Everest with another guy, and they're just about to come back down, but they're missing one of their companions, Mick Burke, who's still on the top. So they're waiting for him, and they've got to get down because they'll die. Okay, you will die up there. So let's see how he starts it. A decision was needed. Short sentence, really powerful, and it immediately drops straight into the situation that they're in. They've got something to decide. What? We don't know, but it's something pretty serious. And then he introduces the concept of time. I pointed at my watch. We'll wait 10 more minutes. And that's like setting a little timer going on your smartphone. You know, waiting for it. Waiting for it. And they pulled out the stove, they're fumbling in the sack. Oh dear, and then the time was up. Short little sentences that add to the drama. Okay, but they still can't see this guy. They still don't know where he is. There was still no sign of Mick. So they're really panicking now. They're beginning to build up this panic, but they've got to get down. The decision had been made. Okay, and now we have to fight for our own lives. Yeah, so he's telling us that there's nothing they could do about it. He's building up the tension. They've got to go, and they've got to go now. The afternoon has drifted into approaching night, so the time is passing, and he's giving us that impression with these quick little sentences, telling us quickly that he's got to get down, and that success was turning into tragedy, hinting at what could happen. Success, climbing Everest, could turn into tragedy as everybody dies, all right? Because that's what happens on Everest. Now, he then heightens the tension because one of the guys that they're going down with, he says, isn't up to it. He's not used to moving without fixed ropes. In other words, he's not used to going down quickly like this or in bad conditions. He's not very good at it. And so that adds an element of tension too, that one of the guys isn't as good as the others. So he could be the weak link in the whole thing. At first he was slow and he's pulling him down. But the guy is strong, but he's moving faster. But they didn't know where they were. Were we in the gully? He asks. So he's talking out loud. It's almost like you're hearing his thoughts and sharing his fear. I felt panic surge inside. Yeah, so we're sharing in that panic. And then he does see something he recognizes, and they go down to these oxygen cylinders that they left there, and they climb another 150 feet. Now, he also gives us absolutely no doubt about the danger here, because they descended 150 feet, no biggie. From there we moved down and across for 1,000 feet towards the last of the fixed ropes. So he's really dropping us right into this, 1,000 feet to climb down. It's really scary. He's building the tension up. And he says as soon as they started, they were covered by an avalanche. So not only are they battling to get down from this very, very dangerous mountain, they've now got an avalanche coming down, which is dropping down on top of them. We threaded our way blindly. So using that adverb there shows you how they're doing it. They're blind to what's going on. Yeah. And then he sees another big avalanche coming, channeling straight at me. So he's building the tension again, isn't he? What's going to happen? He looked across and he could see that they're both of them crouched and they're tying themselves together. They smashed my axe, dramatic language, into the ice and hung on. So as the surging snow kind of poured over them for a few minutes, then it stopped. So again, short little sentences to give you that impression of being there. The silence as the snow stopped. He'd held a sense of relief. Sort of share that with them. The axe had stayed in the ice, so his companion had survived. So it's almost a physical sense of relief. We move on, and then he starts thinking about it. And he thinks, do you know, It was a miracle that we found those ropes in the dark. Extraordinary kind of feeling. It's a miracle. That's very strong language, isn't it? Implying that someone is looking after them, that it shouldn't have happened. And when they finally get into Camp 6, Martin was there, and I burst into tears. It's that sense of relief. This tough, rough mountaineer is willing to show just how close they came to death and just how relieved he was at the end of it. Okay, so remembering question 3, yeah, it's a bit more than simply can you read and can you see what presentation devices. Can you see what the author is trying to do? What's the author done to try and make you feel something? In this case, remember the question, it was which parts of the story of the return to Camp 6 you find tense and exciting. So we're looking for features that would create tension and excitement. We found loads of them. It's really, really easy. Now, one of the things I think to sort of try and do when you read Source 3 is to just get your head into what the author is really saying. All right? Just try and play the video of whatever you're reading in your head. Imagine it was you, all right? And you'll get a real feel for it. What do you see? What do you hear? What do you feel? Those are the things that you've got to try and translate as you write your answer to question 3. And these were my notes. And as with the other two, just pause the video if you like, have a read of my brief notes that I made, that again gave me enough, I think, to answer the question fully. Hope that helps you folks, and I'm sure that if you pay attention to all the stuff that's in the video, I'm certain that you'll do pretty well in your reading paper. More later. Thank you. Bye-bye.